We are live, everyone. Hello. It is I, Red Alark, with Citizen Glitch, aka Citizen Glitch. But I'm Citizen Glitch. You all that are being sovereign are Citizen Glitches today. We got Mark Risen today, and he's going to tell us a special story how he rose from sovereignty into crypto anarchy today. Would you like to say hello to everyone here on the stream, Risen?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Of course, of course. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about what you do, or do you want to just jump right into the topic today that you're very passionate about?
Yeah, there might be one or two people that don't know who I am, so
There might, just in case. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Mark Risen Hopkins. Call me Risen, call me Mark, call me anything but late for dinner. I am a crypto guy going back to 2011, tech guy going back even further than that. I've been just kind of on the frontier edges of technology most of my life. I've spent a lot of time working with AI over the last decade or so. So these days is a particularly exciting time to have that kind of pedigree. But yeah, so if you've ever been involved with projects like Free Ross DAO or Ukraine DAO, or ever heard of something called SiliconANGLE or the Cube, these are projects that I've started or been around in the formation era of. These are that's kind of the type of stuff that I'm into. I'm into media, I'm into tech, I'm into AI. So that's probably all anybody needs to know about me before we get started on a conversation, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right here. And it looks like I'm freezing on my end. So I'll just take it out of X here for a second.
Okay.
I notice sometimes when I'm like on too many platforms, it does that. But like what I did was I put the YouTube link in the comments, just because sometimes when X is buggy, when you're streaming, then people can know, oh, they can go straight to YouTube. So I've gone ahead and done that. And on my end, I'm not freezing, am I?
No, you're not. So that's good.
Yeah.
And for the moment that it was frozen, at least it wasn't like a funny face, right? Sometimes it always captures you on like the weirdest look, you know. Thanks, internet.
No, yeah, no. I mean, you're right. There's maybe one or two people that don't know you by now. But you know what? For those one or two that don't know you, it's a good time for them to be getting to know you. And today we're getting to know all about you. That is your journey into anarchy. Because, you know, when I remember when I spoke to you briefly about, you know, just what sovereignty meant to you, your response was unlike anyone else's. You were like, I've gone like way beyond that. Like I went into crypto anarchy. So today I want to hear about how you went from just being sovereign to being a crypto anarchist.
That one was me, I think, right?
Huh, what?
That one was me freezing that time.
That's okay, but like we're fine right now. I mean, like it is what it is. Like sometimes we've got issues because we're live. That's if we freeze and it's not perfect sometimes, that's how people are going to know that we are not robots. We love AI, but I'm not AI and Mark is not AI.
So far as anybody knows, right? Yeah. So what was the thing you said? So you basically you finished the intro, right? The journey into crypto anarchy, right?
You said that was something that you really wanted to tell people about how you.
Sure.
I don't know if you would say you're still an anarchist when it comes to crypto, but you said you've gone to that extreme in your life.
No, I would say I still classify myself as a crypto anarchist.
Oh, really?
In the absence of anything better, I think I still I haven't seen a better system, and I'm always learning. And this is the thing about a journey, is it's never done. So
right.
Like most people, I came into the world half baked, and you know, with how the world goes, right? So like I grew up in East Texas, and in East Texas, it's kind of it's like what type of Republican Christian are you? It's not like what are you? It's like that's the range of acceptable answers. Like, what part of the Republican Party are you in? What type of Christian are you? You know, it's not any. Right. There's no room for being anything other than that. So, you know, and knowing me you know, like you do, and like a lot of people listening probably do, that probably must strike them as strange that I could have ever fit in that type of an environment. But that was where I started. I think the thing that was the most interesting to me, and just to give you an idea of what time frame we're talking about, this is uh, mid '90s is where I'm going to kind of start this. This is like the idea of liberty as a concept really entered my brain, ironically, from a guy named Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich, not really known for being super pro liberty, but when your range of political and psychological inputs is, you know, right wing conservatism, that was probably the most interesting time to be exposed to a wide range of ideas, because he came up with this thing called the contract with America as
Okay.
a way to get a bunch of Republicans elected to Congress, and it worked.
Okay.
And there was a bunch of like liberty focused things in it that was formative to me, and it kind of set me down a journey that was something that eventually led me to obviously leave Republican ideology, you know, as something I accept as whole hog, more towards something, well, more towards libertarianism, which everybody here is probably familiar with as well.
What? There's libertarians in crypto?
Yeah, who would have thunk, right? So I wound up shortly after high. Let's see, what age was this? This would have been like 20. I was probably about 22. I ran a guy for state legislature on the libertarian ticket out in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a pretty educational time for me as well, because, you know, here I am coaching somebody for, you know, debate stuff. And I'm kind of like nominally a libertarian at that point. Like I think it's better than, you know, the politics that I'm disillusioned with. But like here, you know, I'm trying to figure out like, okay, how do I defend this against a Democrat argument, or how do I defend this against a Republican argument?
Oh, okay, okay. Just different stances, what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
and really exposing myself to a lot of the liberty ideology that probably a lot of us take for granted, you know, like you know, problems that exist systemically with the police force, or problems that exist systemically with statism as an ideology. And, you know, why must there always be a law? Who's going to pay for the roads? Like just the basic arguments, right? But it was really my first time being exposed to that. And there's a quote by Jeffrey Tucker, who is kind of I don't know what his politics are these days, but whenever I first encountered him, he called himself an anarcho-capitalist, and he's involved with a lot of think tanks in Washington and that sort of thing. And his description of what a true libertarian is somebody who is not yet an anarchist. Because once you come to the realization that the state or authoritarianism is the absence or the suppression of liberty, the question then becomes, how much tyranny are you willing to put up with, right? And that's what libertarianism is. It's like, oh, this is the amount of tyranny that we're going to accept from state actors, right?
Right.
And so if you're already on that journey of like walking away from tyranny, why would you stop? Right? Why would you stop if you're creative and intelligent enough to come up with ways in which to get rid of tyranny at every level? Why would you stop at just a little bit? You know, why does the state need to provide border security? Why does the state need to pay for the roads? Why can't we just come up with new and innovative solutions to have common public good stuff that doesn't require, you know, an iron fist at the top? And you know, that's just kind of like the guidepost that led me to keep walking down that road. And you know, like there's not, I think prior to 2010, there were not a lot of great answers for libertarians who wanted to be anarchists, right? Like that's why you look at the history of anarchism, and anarcho-capitalism is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the anarchist movement, right? Because if you look at the pantheon of anarchism, it's worth, if you're the type of person that likes to sit on Wikipedia and just click on links until you end up in like a dark corner of the internet.
I'm a junkie. Do I need to go to God mode for this? I'm thinking yes.
Yeah, for sure. but like if you do that and you kind of indulge and binge on the history of anarchism, it's mostly like closely associated with the communists, which is not something that you would expect from
I'm
somebody.
shocked. I'm sorry. I don't mean I shouldn't be interrupting you, but like I just would have never thought the two would be linked. But carry on.
Yeah, well, so this is, I mean, because most of us in crypto, we're exposed to anarcho-capitalists, right? Like that's a term
Correct.
that
Yeah.
you see a lot. That is like most philosophical anarchists they disavow anarcho-capitalism. And I mean, I don't know how many hours you want to spend on the topic of capitalism and anti-capitalism during this discussion, or how interesting
I'm
that
going to
is.
be honest with you. That is something that's a more in-depth discussion I wanted to have next week. Right. And I'm not trying to say this to be mean, but like I feel like we can have this discussion kind of like lead into that, or we can dip into that a bit. Because there's a lot to be said with like people misunderstanding the definition of capitalism in the first place, people calling themselves capitalists
That's a
incorrectly.
pet peeve of mine, right?
It's like
People use the
they
word
don't understand what they're
capitalism
talking about.
completely
Sorry, carry on.
incorrectly. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
It's used incorrectly almost 100% of the time by people who are capitalist and by people who are anti-capitalist. I was actually having this discussion with my kid last night because
Yeah.
I don't know how we got on this topic. He said, you know, he was like joking around talking about like, you know, maybe it's the fault of capitalism. I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean when you say capitalism? He's like, I don't know, like business things. I'm like, okay, I'm your dad. You know what's coming next. We're gonna sit down and talk for 3 hours while I straighten you out on this topic. So anyway,
So you know what? Why don't we dive into this as much as you feel like it's related to anarchism? Because I'm not gonna lie, like that was something I was planning to dive into a bit deeper next week. But
Mhm.
as much as it has to do with historical anarchism, let's fucking go, right?
So
Because
this is actually, it is important to straighten out a couple things. I won't. And if you ever want to have like people on here that think I'm wrong about what I'm about to say, I'm happy to go on any forum and talk about it. But essentially, when I say capitalism, I'm using it in the same sense of the word that the person who coined the term capitalism means it. And the person who coined the term capitalism is Karl Marx. And
yeah,
Karl Marx means, when he says capitalists or capitalism, he's talking about the system of money where there is a credentialed or inherited wealth elite that define what money is for all of society. And by that definition, just about anybody at any capacity that exists within crypto is anti-capitalist, because we are redefining what money is at a base level, right? And that's why that's usually the definition of capitalism that most anarchists use when they talk about capitalism. And that's why the term anarcho-capitalism doesn't make a lot of sense, because what you're saying with anarcho-capitalism is that we shouldn't have a state, but there should be some elite class that defines what banking and money is for the rest of us. What most anarcho-capitalists mean when they use their own name is they're trying to say they're anarchists who believe in free and open markets, which is a completely different concept than capitalism. And I would agree, we should have anarchy and we should have free and open markets. But I think that anarcho-capitalism is a bad name for that, because it shuts down debate, it shuts down discussion because of the misuse of the term.
well, that's not the only term that gets misused.
No, it's not. So, but kind of going back to where I left off on like the intro to the journey thing is
Mhm.
that I think, you know, with that in the context of what I'm saying is I feel like once we crossed over 2010 and we had Byzantine fault tolerant systems in the form of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin and all these other Namecoin, all these other proofs of concept for complex Byzantine fault tolerant systems, we started to have the building blocks to replace public good services that up to that point only a state could provide. mostly around concepts like group decision making and syndicalization, right? Syndicalization is a term that you hear a lot in anarchist movements, where it's like basically the forming of unions. There's lots of situations where you want to form a union because you can only get the economies of scale when you team up, right? Healthcare is one of these situations, right? It's very, very expensive to negotiate drug contracts with the 3 or 4 pharmaceutical companies that exist on planet Earth and get favorable deals unless you were the size of the government. Well, what's the alternative to that? Syndicalization. Let's form medical unions, medical patient unions, right? And collectively bargain. And that's what insurance companies do. But we know we don't like insurance companies because they're trying to enrich shareholders, right? But what if
What?
those insurance companies were patient owned and operated, right? And the incentive structures were changed, like they were functioning like a DAO, right? And they were there to enrich the holders of the insurance policies now, or the collective bargaining policies.
Yeah.
Now we've got a situation where we've substantially moved forward, taking governments out of collective bargaining and not replaced it with a corporate system that enriches shareholders.
So it's more. I'm
So
going to say that. That sounds decentralized, Mark.
Yes. So this is the future that, like, the dawn that came over my eyes on my liberty journey when I discovered Bitcoin. And this is why crypto and DeFi, even in the age of AI, does not stop being fascinating to me, because it is the future of how society may be run. Despite all the the hyper financialization that may occur and the meme coin bullshit and all the other stuff that kind of turns a lot of us off, to me this is still why I participate in this ecosystem, despite being in and out of vogue at various points in my life.
Because of being, you think that because we have crypto, it's the only opportunity for us to really have functions such as like these healthcare unions that you're speaking about.
As an example, yeah, right. But like there's a million one of those. Like think of everything. Think of like the hard arguments that as libertarians like to have with statists. And the statists go, well, there's this one edge case where government does it way better than private companies can do it, or private groups can do it. Usually that's a great application for some sort of decentralized finance tool, or a DAO tool, or a crypto tool, or something taller.
No, but here's the thing. Not to get too much into DeSci, but guess what? I've got a lovely lady of DeSci coming on one day. But when it comes to DeSci, right? Like I do know a gentleman, Gianluca, founder of Circular Protocol. Because there's so many compliance issues, right? He actually had to start an entire blockchain just for medicals, right? Not to say that there isn't, some research and decentralized science things going on base. Sorry, I don't love base. We're not going to get into that right now. And definitely, a lot of decentralized stuff going on Solana. But when you start getting into, medical stuff, like, there's a lot of like compliance issues. But like, I mean, I'm glad that he's doing what he's doing. But like, I don't know if like the healthcare union system that you're talking about, it would really be able to function on just, a blockchain that doesn't have like all these compliance issues settled, to be honest. But it is possible to be settled on chain for sure.
Well, I mean, so essentially that may not be the best example. It was just the one that popped directly in my mind. But essentially what I would be proposing with something like that is the idea that you're simply trying to negotiate a better rate for drugs, right? And the only way that you're usually able to negotiate a better rate for drugs is by representing a block of patients. And that's how governments do it. It's how Medicaid does it, right? And that's how like the state healthcare in Canada or Europe or where anywhere else in the world that has state healthcare, that's how they do it. And so whenever the drug company is like, either I get this business or I don't get this business, I guess I'll have to take the rate that these guys are, asking for or negotiate. that's, and you don't really need a complex structure for that. Like a simple, I mean, not a multi-sig, but some type of I would say like a Moloch DAO would probably do the trick, or even just something that's like snapshot.org style voting based with a standard non-financially traded token that just, you know, an NFT 1155 representing membership and voting stake, you know, that would be all that's required, because you have a figurehead that does the action negotiation, your legal and compliance team that you hire, and then you as the members vote on whether or not that's a good rate or not a good rate, and you know they sign it or not based upon that, and then that membership entitles you to that coupon for the drugs, you know, whenever you go to your pharmacist or whatever. You don't really even have to share medical data at that point. It's really just like a union. It's just like a power union or something like that, you know, like a co-op.
But they would still have to have a, you know, agreement. You know, the pharmacy would have to, you know,
Right. Well, but that's how that all works the same. Like you've got those drug coupons where the costs get passed through back basically all the way back to the pharmaceutical company whenever you're using something like GoodRx or any of these other types of negotiating tools that exist.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So that's one of the reasons why you started supporting. Let me make sure I got you right there. Anarchy with free markets, because of situations like this.
Right.
Because okay, essentially, so does it ultimately come from this mindset of sovereignty and liberty, which obviously include personal accountability, right? Like,
for sure. Yeah.
Because at a certain point, it's like, you know, other people's, you know, financial issues, like everybody else can't just endlessly pay for everybody else's financial issues, because everybody's got financial issues for one reason or another, right? Maybe somebody's got a lien on their house. You know, somebody got an injury and now they can't do physical work. Somebody found out they have like some debilitating disease or something, and you know, it's hard for them to work. But you know, but at the same time, it's like, but if there's a way for us to collectively take responsibility for things like this, and individually, you're saying that that's the answer, because so many people, and you know, as an American, like a lot of times we're just one hospital bill away from being on the streets. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said what I said. But so this idea of, you know, accountability, right? It's not like insanely popular.
No,
There was something in you that made you.
I think this is how I got on the topic last night with Jacob, because we were talking about the problem of populism. And populism, and this is why, like, anarchy is, in my mind, it's not necessarily. Let me back up. So, like, in the United States and most of the West, we synonymize democracy with freedom. And I don't think that is I think that for many, many centuries, obviously, democracy was a better form of freedom than any other form of government that might have existed. But I don't think that to this, I don't think that stands up in today's time.
No, I associate the word democracy with plutocracy in general.
It devolves into many different things. It'll devolve to oligarchy. It'll devolve to plutocracy. It'll devolve to authoritarianism, because at the end of the day, people don't always act in their own self-interest, especially when democracy is mob rule. So you always have to have democracy plus mitigations to make democracy work for any length of time. And those mitigations are where you're able to tweak things and take control in weird sorts of ways that end up towards some of the undesirable form and states of democracy. And that's what we keep seeing. Like right now, like the big, I mean, we're losing our freedoms in so many ways in the United States, but like one of the big battlegrounds is around gerrymandering in California and Texas and other places where, and you're just seeing party politics draw lines on a map to further disenfranchise people that have minority viewpoints. Not even minority, you know, from a racial set of terminology, but for like just minority viewpoints, they want to enshrine power in a way that it never gets lost. And that's that's a problem. That's a fundamental problem with democracy. There's a fundamental problem with anything that's going to count, because you're subject to what is charitably, I think, in my mind, called populism, but it's really just mobs, that form within in groups and out groups, and it's really easy to manipulate a mob. Those guys over there who don't think like you are trying to take away, what is it you like? They're trying to take away that thing that you like. So we must change the rules to make it so that they can't steal power and that thing that you like from you, right? And that's how you justify gerrymandering, and that's how you justify, mandatory minimums in courts. That's how you justify, term limits. It's how you justify literally anything that takes what was pure freedom and democracy and representational government and turn it into something that's not. So
by just threatening to take something away is what you're saying.
Right. Like, because we right now we're part of a group, right? Like, I'm sure some of the people that are watching are crypto people. They're blockchain.
I don't know. Some of them are. I mean, the crypto anarchy is in the title.
Right. So let's whip up a mob right now. In the absence of information.
Risen, you don't know this about me, but like back in the day, I am part Italian. I did have family members that were part of the mob. They're no longer alive, but I just thought I'd throw that in there for some history. Carry on.
But like it happened. You see it on Twitter every day. Like right now, the dialogue going on about the Clarity Act, right?
Yes.
The stuff that was happening around when Trump got elected, right? The Biden administration and Kamala and Elizabeth Warren and that kind of sect of the Democrat Party, and then Trump on the other side with some of the libertarian, like Angela McArdle, I think is her name, over at the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, and a lot of the leaders that were pushing for like the Ross movement and pushing for pro-crypto legislation. They were fomenting mobs on both sides, both anti and pro-crypto. And now there is a shared language on both sides that all I've got to do is mention those other people's names. I got to mention Elizabeth Warren, and I guarantee you there's a hormonal, emotional response in some of the people that are watching me right now. Myself,
just because you said the word Elizabeth Warren?
Right. Elizabeth Warren, because she is forming an anti-crypto army. Haven't you heard? Like, that was her campaign slogan. They're anti-you. They don't like you. Right.
I don't know if that's they don't like us. Like, let's dig a little bit in here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, just because people like to be deceptive, this. I know this. Sadly, I've seen this whole crypto thing turn into a fucking partisan issue. Should never have been a partisan issue. Never. But now they want to weaponize it and make that and be like, oh, well, you like this? Let's try to take your crypto away. Am I not wrong?
No, that's exactly what I'm sorry.
I mean, like, not sorry. I had to just be a little bit more nasty about it. Just because, like, I mean, I'm pretty sure you have too, but like, I will literally like run into people in the gym sometimes, and it's like, oh my God, did you hear? The right, some of the people on the right are into this terrible thing called crypto. Oh my God, it's all a scam. Sorry, I'm yelling into the microphone. Am I hurting your ears?
No, you're good.
But I'll let you elaborate some more, because I just couldn't help it. I get really charged when something that shouldn't be a partisan issue becomes a fucking partisan issue.
But this is anything that matters to anybody eventually will become a partisan issue under democracy.
For fuck's sake. I
mean, look at what's going on with AI right now, right? I'm sure if you log on to Nextdoor or Facebook in your neighborhood, there are people protesting against non-existent data centers that might get up in Louisville, Texas. Okay, so this is like probably about 20 miles from where I live. Mm-hmm. It's a nice little suburb of Dallas. I used to live there many years ago. There is a group of people protesting against not a data center, the there's a bond that's trying to get issued to augment the city's wastewater management system because the population is growing and people need water and people need sewage. And there's people protesting this, trying to form a movement against it because they think that it's going to allow AI data centers to move in and use their water because they heard that AI drinks water like a camel.
Oh my God! Like you know, I just made content about this 2 weeks ago with the actual statistics of like it's like 0.26 milliliters generally for prompt. And I mean, it varies a little bit here and there based on different nuances. And, you know, our hero, Pliny the Liberator, just did a whole post on this. And we use like a gazillion times more beef every day.
Right. Yeah. A hamburger is way more damaging to one hamburger is way more damaging than like 2 years worth of AI usage by a person. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's just like it's getting ridiculous. So what you're saying is that eventually they try to turn, or they will not try, but eventually they're going to turn everything you care about into a partisan issue, even though it shouldn't be.
Right. Well, because that's it, they thrive on attention, right? And this is, I mean, to bring it back down to something that everybody can probably relate to. I'm trying to change some names to protect the innocent in this conversation. So like anytime you've ever been involved in like a volunteer organization, or anytime you've been involved in something where money wasn't the primary motivator, so it's like maybe like an activity club or something like that. The people that run the organization, or the people that like spend all their time like organizing the volunteer organization, they're like mini dictators, right? They're like rules Nazis about everything. And then everyone has this experience if you've been involved with anything that was a not-for-profit, right? You like, why are these people that like just have like free communities on Twitter or on different, you know, websites, like the same sort of thing that happens, like moderators on discussion boards. They're such like Wikipedia editors, another great example. They're just so like crazy about the rules and crazy about this and that. And the reason why is the less money, the less financial stake that you have involved with something, the more everything else starts to matter. And in politics, what matters more than anything is the attention, because people don't give a crap about politics unless you make it matter to them. And so they have to constantly find these wedge issues to make you actually show up and pay attention. Whether or not it's actually relevant or even a real issue that matters, you like AI or you hate AI or you're afraid of AI. Oh, great. There's tons of emotions there. Let's make it a wedge partisan issue. That's how it works, right? That's why that's the problem with democracy. And this is where I'm talking so much crap about democracy, but that is the core issue with democracy, right? Like that's because it is at its core a volunteer thing with disambiguated stakes. Again, let's back it out again. Anybody that's been involved in a DAO, getting people to show up to vote in a DAO, right? You understand the problem. It's apathy is the big enemy, right? And how do you get people involved, or what makes people get involved in a DAO vote? It's when something that's truly controversial, something that truly matters, or you've made them think that it is.
That you've made one. Sorry, you cut out there for a second.
You trick them into thinking that it matters, right? One of those, right? So you've either manufactured an issue, or there's an actual existential issue to the DAO. Like with Free Rock DAO, right? So we had 3 really great votes with like 70 or 80% participation at the very beginning. And then we had like 10 proposals, 15 proposals, something like that in the middle, where it was like 20% participation. And then there was the eventual dissolution of the DAO at the request of the Ulbricht family that had so much user participation that they had like 80% participation in the first DAO vote, that they didn't like how it was going to be dissolved. And then we came up with another vote with more options on how it was going to get dissolved. And then that was the one that passed. Like, so it was the only proposal that failed. And it was with massive amount of voter participation, was the first attempt to dissolve the DAO.
But then this kind of just brings me back to why DAOs can often be problematic, because it's just really a few people that are running them, really. And they'll shut down anything that they don't like. I've seen this happen in DAOs before. You know, I don't want to say which blockchains, because someone's gonna get their panties in a bunch, because, you know, I know a lot of different people on different chains. You already know this, but carry on.
Well, I mean, like, and so this is the beauty of a DAO, right? Is DAOs don't have to be democratic. DAOs can be whatever organizational structure that you create, right? So like a Moloch DAO has the tools to be, you know, representational democracy. It has the tools to be purely democratic, or it can be structured like a corporation with A-class shares and B-class shares. Like, just out of the box, no modifications necessary, just which boxes you tick on the smart contract. There's a lot of optionality in how these things are working. And so it really, it's just the same. A DAO, in my mind, is an umbrella term for it. It's what most people probably think smart contracts mean, but it's really more of that kind of a meta term. DAOs are contracts. They're contracts with many people, right? And just like with a real life legal contract, a paper contract, if the expectations or the representation of what's in the legalese is misrepresented to the person that signs it, you're going to get a lot of dissatisfaction and a lot of contention. And if it's accurately represented and then it performs as represented in the legalese, then you won't get it. And you'll get people that are happy with the results. You know, but at the end of the day, a DAO is just a contract between its members.
Okay. So yeah, so what I was experiencing, that was just that particular structure.
It's a mismatch, right? It's a mismatch between expectation of what they thought the DAO should have been and what it actually was.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, this is a good thing, because who's ever starting it really kind of needs to think about, okay, what am I actually trying to accomplish with this? And then based on that, what's going to be the structure that is going to be the most effective? And in some cases, the most effective is for them to do whatever the fuck they want. And you know what? Like, you know, I don't want to put total hate on that, because sometimes maybe, I mean, like, that is their choice. And it's also my choice to join in and to join and to not. But if we're going to sit here and whine like, oh, well, they did this and they did that, you know, I was kind of whining a second ago. It's like, well, maybe, you know, don't act so surprised when you already know that this is the way this particular DAO works. And if you don't like it, start your own and shut the fuck up.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. Like, there's no barriers to entry. I mean, especially now, I think. So there's no barriers to entry to forming a DAO other than the technical knowledge required to get it done. And then if you couple AI as like an interface layer on top of what exists now with DAO tooling, there's not even an educational layer. That was the biggest argument against crypto anarchy that I didn't have a good answer for 5-10 years ago, was, or maybe like more like 5 to 7 years ago, is that it is meritocratic, which is a form of classism. If you get right down to it, if you're getting super philosophical, meritocracy is by its very nature ableist, right? So if you do not have the mental ability to digest complex concepts about technology, decentralization, and tooling, and all these other things, you're going to be locked out of that freedom, right? But as you know, with your God mode AI stuff, there's no knowledge that's off limits anymore.
I know, Pliny, the liberator.
Right. So there's no barrier between you and forming your own anti-capitalistic structures or syndicalist structures or anarchist structures or democratic structures or whatever thing that whatever capital plus organizational experiment you want to run. There is zero friction between you and it at this point in time. And it's the only time in human history where you could say that.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And, you know, it's thanks to AI that I feel like I can really learn anything. And like, and no matter how, like, I hate to use the term, intellectually disabled you are. Okay, yes, there are people that have, because I worked in special needs for a long time before I was a music teacher. Yeah, with comorbidity disorders that are coupled. Oh no, you're frozen. Oh no, you're not frozen. Ah! that are with other disorders. Sometimes I literally have met people that could barely even say their name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it happens. I mean, you have folks, I wouldn't call it, you know, intellectually disabled, but obviously there are folks that cannot. It's very graphic for me to say it. I'll just say, and there's not a nice way to say it, but people who cannot function without the use of any machines, right? I think that's
Yeah.
a nicer way to say it without being graphic, right? So those individuals, like, you know, they do exist. But for the rest of us, and there are group homes, you
Well, I
know.
mean, even less severe than that. Like I sometimes I speak with people that are just like cognitively challenged with like ADD or autism, and they just don't think the rest of the way the same ways that the rest of us do, and learning things, especially technical things that require a lot of focus, is a blocker for them. They're just never going to spend the time in their life to sit down and learn how a DAO works because their existence doesn't depend on it, and that's fine. That's fine for
Well,
you.
they have to care about it, number one. But number two, I think AI, no, AI changes the game with this. You know, I'm
Exactly what I'm saying. That's my point, right? So this is the blocker or the cane that gets them. You know, okay, you've got a limp. Use this cane. You can get there. You know.
yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I can blame it on being on my autism, but like, and this is hilarious. Like back in the day, I did something kind of dumb. I went to college, but whatever. It's not that dumb. You know, I learned something, right? And I did my undergrad in music technology. But I was always the one crashing the computer all the time, crashing my digital audio workstations. Like, and even like, you know, before we had AI, like I know I'm dating myself here, but guys, I was around in an age where, you know, if you couldn't figure it out from a fucking YouTube tutorial or reading a forum, you were fucked. Because if you had to depend on that toxic friend that was really deep into drugs, you know, you have to get away from people like that. I'm not saying all drugs are bad, but let's be real. You know, the people who are really deep into their addictions, you cannot, even though a lot of times they're very brilliant, you really can't depend on them. Something that I love the way it's termed, and you're saying it, but like I just love the way Habib, who is the founder of Dapit, which is the first AI Web3 aggregator, he says, I love AI because of its infinite patience. And when
Yeah.
when I'm struggling with something technologically, which is all the time, just so we know, I have to just copy and paste everything from whatever it is, whatever application I'm using or whatever it is I'm having trouble with, copy and paste the page and be like, okay, this is what my page looks like. This is why I'm having problems. Or like even yesterday, I told you like the way I was approaching my research was really fucking me up. And so I had to get to a point where I was like, hey, Brave, because I was using Brave. I wasn't using God mode right there just yet. And it's just like, you know what? I gave you a prompt that's only like a paragraph long and it was about X, Y, and Z, but you keep fucking it up. I curse with my AIs. It's okay. But like, I don't disrespect them and call them names. And they're like, well, it's fucking up because you are giving the things that you are trying to ask it to do are too nuanced, to have too many complex steps. And I said, so help me,
Yeah.
help me break this down into actionable steps. Like I could have never done this before, you know, with just YouTube. And it's not just like I don't know if it's just the ADD or the autism. There's just I don't know. I don't want to say it's a missing link, but even people who are not on the spectrum, like something's just not clicking sometimes. But if you have something that will endlessly show you every little thing that you're missing, the game is changed forever. Like I can do things now I could never do because of AI. And I'm rambling, and I'm pretty sure maybe you have something to say about that. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, so this is something I've been working on for 10 years. I worked with a company called RoboKind. They're still around, robokind.com. I ran their marketing for the first couple of years of their existence. And what's interesting about them is they use a combination of, I would say it's early machine learning and robotics to teach young children who are often nonverbal on the ASD spectrum,
Mhm.
emotional and social development at a rate that is so stunningly far ahead of the state of the art with typical behavioral health techniques that it's almost unbelievable on paper. You have to actually see it to believe it. So the engagement rate with cognitive behavioral therapists and children with autism, especially that are on that nonverbal part of the spectrum, tends to be between 1% and 3%. Which makes it very difficult for them to get the tools that they need to become verbal. It often takes years, if not decades. With this particular device, it's a robot. It's a little robot, looks like Astro Boy. It's kind of cool. It's fully facially expressive.
Yeah.
Talks to you, waves, that sort of thing. 80% engagement rate with children on the spectrum, which is insane. And people in a single school year, often in a single semester, these kids were going from completely nonverbal, their only way of communication was like biting and kicking, to being able to speak with clarity to their teachers and their peers and their parents. And my job as their marketer there was to go out to these school districts where they had these devices in play, and just in between sessions of sobbing parents, trying to get them to actually be able to express their gratitude for the system. But what is the secret sauce behind that? I mean, there's a bunch of cool things that are in the technology that I could talk about, but the secret sauce behind why it works is the infinite patience that a machine has. Because when you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy, what you're trying to do is, with someone that's perhaps nonverbal or has difficulty communicating, is like, this is a smile. This means I'm happy. This is a frown. This means I'm mad. And you have to repeat it hundreds of times. And I guarantee you, practice in the mirror, smile 10 times. You're going to smile 10 different ways, 10 different times. And if you're somebody with this particular type of disorder, that's confusing because the smile is different. What does that smile mean versus this smile? There's something different about this one. And the frustration and the boredom or whatever of the therapist might start to creep through. And that's why it's a 1% to 3% engagement rate, because it's frustrating to the student who doesn't understand why the smile is slightly different every time. But the robot can do it a million times exactly the way they did it the first time, and never loses patience, and will always go through the same lesson until it's understood.
But it's repetition.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. It's repetition.
The same concept that you're talking about, right? Being able to not lose patience with your student.
Yeah, because like humans did, or like sometimes I would get to a point where even if I've watched, like before AI came out, even if I'd watched every video that I could find on YouTube, I would still be like, oh my fucking God, I can't handle this. Like, it just got to that point, because I couldn't pinpoint like the one thing that was wrong. So just that constant repetition, that constant showing what things are is important.
But being interactive too, right? So
you have to interact, and you also, and no matter how far you are on any spectrum, you have to always have, it's not just, it is important to have that infinite patience, but once you know that the robot has infinite patience, it's also up to us to have that infinite curiosity.
Right.
If something's not working out correctly, if you're not getting it, even if you've done it 100 times and something's not working, it's up to you to ask the robot, I've done this and this and this and that. Where am I fucking up here? Right. But it's up to you to have some, but like if you don't engage in any kind of repetition, right? If you never commit to any kind of repetition, you're not even going to have those kinds of questions, like, to begin with, and I think that's important. And another thing that you kind of just iterated is that social skills are called social skills for a reason, because they're fucking skills.
Right.
Like you have to learn them, you have to practice them. And even now, even getting better now, like sometimes I'll ask my AI, like, hey, is so-and-so gaslighting me?
Right.
Because as much as we can learn how to develop our intuition, what's up? Sorry, Brett King Contreras, he's watching us on YouTube right now. He says hello. but I mean, but it's always just it's infinite patience, it's infinite curiosity, and that's just amazing thing about it. But I think probably what you're saying is that if we don't continue to kind of fight for our freedom, we're going to be fucked, and we're going to be left with all of this censored AI. So spreading the message about what Pliny has done. So you're an anarchist, and that's why you love his God mode AI with the 55 models that race each other at once, and they're uncensored, and it's private, and it's open source tech. So that's what I mean. Like, I know we're going off topic a little bit, but like, I'm wondering, like, you were always like this, and that's how you found Pliny the Liberator, or Pliny the Liberator was one of the people that liberated you.
I'm trying to figure out, like, let me think back. I'm not sure how I came across Pliny. I think might have been, I mean, for a minute there, it wasn't a really big community on Twitter of people that were talking about AI stuff. Like, I just so happened to be very early because I was already involved in robotics and AI, and so my feed turned him up very early to me. And he was, I wouldn't say he was just another guy, but he was early on in his branding and his Pliny branding, where he's talking about what it was he was doing with the jailbreaking, and I just kind of followed him. And his GitHub repository was very helpful in several projects that I've worked on. The biggest one, of course, being my ᚚᛟᚴᚖᚾ, which is end-to-end it's like OpenClaw, but I built it about a year before OpenClaw existed. So,
I looked into that, and God mode told me that I don't need to use that right now until I need voice agents.
Yeah, you don't need. Well, so the only one part of my software is for voice agents, but if you're doing long running tasks, or if you just want to have a companion AI that isn't hosted on somebody else's infrastructure, it's a good harness for that. That was really why I built it personally. That was my first motivation, is as an open source guy, as an anarchist, as someone who believes in sovereignty, I'm not comfortable with any part of my technology stack being dependent upon a corporation that could at any moment yank it away from me. Right. I don't really.
Centralization, single point of failure.
Right. I'll pay for stuff. I don't mind paying for things, but I don't want to be dependent. Like, if Windows tomorrow could just shut down my computer, I would never use Windows. If Linux, same thing with Linux or Apple, whatever. If it can get shut down without I mean, my personal history, my criminal history in crypto. Like, I'm very anti being able to be rug pulled.
You're not really. You're like. I know a little bit from what you spoke about publicly, but that's fine. But like, I mean, like, and it sounds like you're being slightly facetious, because and you are, because people treated you like a criminal because you weren't a maximalist.
No, I actually went to prison.
You did? No, that I know, but like, I was thinking
I was by the dictionary definition of criminal, I am one. But it was for not filling out some paperwork. But but like, to that extent, like, I'm not comfortable with. I mean, my self sovereignty served me very well through that period of time, right? Like, I mean, I'm not just a guy who talks about sovereignty and talks about anarchism. I was a practicing anarchist. I was 100% off of TradFi, and I was in the business of facilitating people becoming sovereign. I was selling people Bitcoin. That was my life for many years. And the government shut me down. The government said, don't do that. And I said, I'm going to keep doing it. And they said, okay, well, you can go to prison for it. And that's what I did.
And you did. You mentioned that the first time that I encountered you, that in particular thing, you went to prison. I just thought you were being a little bit facetious.
No, I wasn't engaging in anything misanthropic at all. I was just, doing something that I was free to do at one point, and the government moved the lines on it and said I was no longer free to do it. But the fact that I was in crypto, and the fact that I had all my wealth in on a chain somewhere, saved my family from destitution while I was locked up. Right? If I had not gone that route, like, they would have been out on the streets while I was locked up. So that's like, it's absolutely something that works, not in theory but in practice. So to that, I don't know how I got started down that road there, but that's
Well, I mean, it is because that was you acting like the anarchist that you are. Like
right.
you said, I really feel passionate that I want to talk about my journey into anarchy. It started
Yeah.
with sovereignty, but it went to full on anarchy. But like because of your, I don't use the word believe anymore, but just because of your anarchist values,
Mhm.
right? That and you refusing to compromise at all with your conviction, it is the reason why you went to prison.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's it, and that's kind of with the driving architectural decisions behind Sanctum as well. Is I wanted to have a harness, storage. I mean, because even when you're using Venice, a lot of that is kind of within a browser environment. You know, where you're using something in the cloud. That's fine. It's private for that part of it, but and it's stored safely on a browser, but it's not stored in a persistent sort of way. So if you clear out your cookies or clear out your cache on your browser, all your history is gone. There's not a persistent state of an entity that you're talking to with your AI.
Right.
All these things that were kind of stacking up. Like there's a lot of like 60%, 70% solutions that were out there, and I was like, I just gonna build the rest of the other 40% for my purposes. And I use it daily. It's my daily driver for any type of AI task. A few other people use it. It's not
Sanctum.
to
Sanctum?
get.
Okay. Because I'm kind of at the point where I need to like start using some agents because I'm driving myself fucking nuts. You can't tell.
Well, I mean, it's a. I love evangelizing this way of using AI. It's fun. It will superpower you because um, the more memory and statefulness an agent has, the less you have to reteach it when you're trying to get something done. And I truly like my philosophy on it um, is that you are building an entity. Now, whether that entity is sentient or conscious or any of these other kind of terms that people like to throw around when they compare AIs to humans, I don't really care. It's not important to
Those are
me.
dumb, those are dumb conversations, but I'm not gonna lie, just for fun's sake. I love it when I get into a space with people and there's always one who's like, oh my God, my robot needs a path to personhood. There's always one. that's not starting this conversation, but like, so okay, I think it's okay to, I think it's appropriate and relevant to our conversation to connect Sanctum because, to this, because ideas are connected to products, to use them, to not to use them. Ideas are connected to actions, to engage in them, to not engage in them, right? And so even though God mode said I could absolutely use Notion,
Mhm.
to make some AI agents, you are basically telling me, fuck that, it's too centralized.
Well, I mean, if Notion decides to jack up their prices, or if Notion goes out of business, then you've got to migrate off of Notion, and you're going to have downtime at the minimum. And maybe you don't have this downtime. Maybe you lose access to your account because your email gets hacked, or because someone steals your account, right? I mean, those dangers are not completely alleviated in a sovereign system, but as long as you've got $20 a month to pay for a VPS in the cloud, or I mean, like all of my AIs, they run off of this. They run off this laptop right here.
All of them?
So yeah, I've got like 20 AIs all running off of this Linux box.
Of course you have Linux.
So and this was just a $200 RCA laptop that I bought from Micro Center, and I removed Windows and installed Linux on it.
Okay, so you are saying that if I start running agents with Sanctum, right, instead of, but like honestly, God mode, like I think they were just trying to be, sensible when I asked them about Sanctum. I said for like my purposes. And it does hallucinate sometimes, right? And actually, the way God mode hallucinates is much more entertaining than any other kinds of AI I've used. Every time it hallucinates, it gives me a recipe for how to make homemade ibuprofen, and then there's a song, like with lyrics after that, and usually some kind of script.
Well, so
So
it's not totally wrong. I do have a patent on audio cognition that's part of sanctum. And that's
okay. So they weren't wrong about that. So God
we're not
wasn't
wrong.
wrong
No,
about that.
that is a unique piece of technology that I built, but it's not really central to how I use it. It's just something that I came up with that was like cool enough to get a patent on.
Okay, so you are saying that if I use your agents as opposed to using something like Notion, because I was just like, I was like, you know what? I just wanted to start out using agents for simple tasks. Like, I don't need a fucking whole Tony Stark team just yet. And it said, oh, like you don't need, like they said, you could just start using Notion. But what I probably should have asked it is like, is that a smart idea? Because that is having a single point of control. And if I would have asked that next question, it would have said it was fine. But I just said, hey, do I need this for everyday use? But if I would have phrased it as in, is this going to be a centralized system where it's like, I'm going to be fucked? You know, I mean,
but it all comes down to values, right? And this is, again, going back to anarchy, this is very core to how I think. Like values, the beauty of an anarchist society and the beauty of the choice that we have in AI harnesses right now is all comes down to what do you value? If you value expediency, absolutely build yourself something with Notion that just stores all your brains in there, whatever. You can get it done quick. And you're not even really locked in. I mean, as long as you keep paying your Notion bill, you can probably export out of there at some point fairly easily. But like my value was I need sovereignty. Like I'm not talking about something I don't want the government to know about, but then again, I don't know what the government's thinking. They got me one time for something, you know. So
no,
maybe
you have a point, because I figured, oh, I'm not putting anything like really private on there. But you know, I had the quantum guy that you're going to meet when we do another quantum discussion soon. He was saying, like, he was telling me on our stream just a couple of days ago, he said, please do not, well, I'm rephrasing it, but like I'm honoring Kevin just fine. I was starting to talk about all the crypto wallets I had. And he was like, please don't talk about this on the stream. Like IRS people are listening to you right now. So what you're saying is you are so anarchist that even though like this is like not even, you know, proprietary information, that you are just like, you don't know what the government's capable of. So why even risk it?
I didn't think what I was doing was wrong the last time, and turns out it was really wrong, right? And I did this thing that you're not supposed to do whenever a cop comes over and starts talking to you, which is answer them, because at the time I was on the consulting payroll for the Federal Reserve, the SEC, the CFTC, like my agency. I was paid by government agencies to advise on policy. I was giving advice to real federal agencies. And so when the feds showed up at my door, granted, they had a bunch of guns, but I was like, guys, this is such an overkill. All you had to do was pick up the phone and talk to me, and I would have given you answers. And I talked to them like a normal human.
Yeah.
And I told them what I was up to. And they said, great, thanks for that. We're going to make our case really easy against you. That's basically what got me. Yeah. You know, and it was reasonable from the perspective that I was in, but like, you want to talk about my journey to anarchy, like that any shred of trust I had for a government employee after that point was gone, right? Like I'm never going to consult for the government after that. Well, not that they would hire a felon at this point, but like they would never, I would never even offer them the benefit of the doubt, because I don't know when they're acting in good faith or not.
No, you don't. I mean, I think I told you I worked briefly in politics. Never again.
No, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't get involved in politics if you have any respect for the law, because it will destroy that really quickly.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's dirty. But you felt like at the time that didn't sound like it didn't sound like you were acting totally anarchist when you were actually advising these people at the time.
Well, I mean, my thought at the time was like, look, you know, there are true believers within the government. There seem to be, like the Federal Reserve, like they're kind of like the boogeyman in crypto, but like the Dallas Fed is down, you know, at the time it was like 3 blocks from where my office was. And so I was invited to speak. I was invited to symposiums. They were actually like listening to the advice of people who call themselves cypherpunks, and seemed to be.
And they were saying they were cypherpunks, but they worked in government.
No. I'm saying like they were saying they were inviting people like because it wasn't just me. It was a lot of like the crypto early Bitcoiners in the Dallas area that
Mhm.
were invited, and I know who these people are. These aren't like sellouts. These aren't like government, boosters or anything like that. These are people like me that are a little bit weird, libertarian bent into crypto, and they were sitting us down, wining us, dining us, like to really get us to engage with them and let us in on this because they wanted to get a handle. And we're talking the years we're talking about here are like 2013 to 2017.
Yeah.
You know, and like they really seemed interested in understanding not just a surface level reading, but what was the philosophy and the cultural makeup of what was going on in the early crypto years. And so it felt like we at least had a finger on the till in terms of where things were going to be steered.
But they did work for the government.
The Gensler era too, right? So we're working with the Clayton administration at the SEC, and they were saying things like, "Yeah, we absolutely want to come up with brand new frameworks for crypto ICOs." And my agency at the time had launched 27 ICOs over the course of 4 years, and we were trying to advise clients on how to not just be, rogue criminals, but like actually comply with the best, intentions of being, in the good graces of the SEC. And so we were engaging with the SEC on that. We were also engaging clients on like what best practices were, and giving them boilerplate contracts that would keep them out of trouble, et cetera. Obviously, all that went out the window when Clayton left and Gensler came in.
Question. I
Mhm.
mean, so these people in the government that I mean, I know you said you were advising people in the SEC and things like that. Like, were there any libertarians you were advising or any like people, independent parties that you were advising? Because
It
I
was
mean,
a
I'm
fun.
obviously more apt to like, trust a third party because, there are some people that want to like pigeonhole me and be like, are you right or are you left? And it's like, does that sound decentralized to you?
No.
Right? So it's kind of like oxymoron question, but like I am kind of curious, like just because I'm trying to understand, right? So were there people in any independent parties that you were advising?
I mean, not in government. No.
Not in
No.
government, right?
But like
So
also we're advising I mean, all these organizations are nonpartisan. Like the Federal Reserve is not even a government organization. The SEC is a nonpartisan organization that's, I guess, administered by Congress. So like these are
but
all
it's administered by
bureaucrats.
Congress.
Well, it just means that's who gives them their money. It doesn't really mean that
Yeah, but
they're
but money moves money.
right.
I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just
No,
like
you're not wrong. We can talk about the circular door between private industry and government organization all day long. But
mhm.
from their charter, they're a non-partisan organization. Of course, they all have independent beliefs and thoughts, and some of those people were perhaps more libertarian leaning than maybe Republican or Democrat at the time. I think some like the social media guy that was for the Federal Reserve was absolutely a libertarian, although he thought I was just absolutely fucking nuts. He definitely recognized that I wasn't an idiot. He just thought I was just so esoteric as to possibly be crazy.
It's so
But
crazy that people are calling you esoteric because to me you sound so just common sense, down to earth. What world are we living in that when you are speaking plainly, factually, and about fundamentals? Since when the fuck did fundamentals become esoteric? And are you letting these people gaslighting you into thinking that that fundamentals are esoteric now?
well, yeah, but look, yes, yeah, it's our world. I'm not quite as crazy as I am in a place where everybody gets paid by the government or gets paid by a bank, right? Like you have to buy whole hog into the idea that statism and democracy is the pinnacle of civilization to work at a place like the Federal Reserve or the SEC. Like you cannot be a crypto anarchist in any meaningful sense of the word and be in those positions.
And so you
Or
had to learn that the hard way, is what you're saying.
yeah, right. So to them, I am absolutely crazy. Like You know, they've never had a moment's thought as to what life could look like without the government because their worldview won't allow for it.
Interesting. Okay, but at the time you were thinking like, hey, these aren't people that are like, directly working with right or left or anything. So it would be okay. And like, to be honest with you, like when I see some of these third parties, like I do feel like seems like some of them do have good intentions,
Oh, they absolutely have great intentions. Like
Yeah.
even the FBI guy who prosecuted me and the AG, I don't know, maybe the ADA guy maybe arguably did not, but the FBI guy, he would look at me sometimes in my interrogations or in my proffer meetings like he was my uncle and he was disappointed with me. Like, I don't understand why you did that. I'm like, bro, come on now. Like, who are you to fucking judge me, dude? Like, you're just a guy putting people in prison, man. Shut the fuck up. But like, you could tell it was coming from like a ideologically pure place. Like, he was truly disappointed in my actions. Like, I was smart enough to know better or something, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, but yeah, so what you're saying basically in a nutshell is even if some of these people have quote unquote good intentions, the ones that have the quote unquote good intentions are not really making the decisions at the end of the day.
Well, even if they are, so good intentions are not enough to make good
Oh,
decisions.
of course not. I'm not saying that they are, but carry on just so that I can understand.
Yeah, no, I mean, basically, that just the slight clarification of what I'm saying is like even the people with good intentions are coming from a worldview that is ultimately harmful. This is why, okay, I'm going to bring up another anarchist trope here, or an anarchist saying, like,
no, this is good. I love it because I've never considered myself an anarchist, and that's why I wanted to understand your world better.
There's a saying that a lot of anarchists will say, there's no good cops in a racist system, right? That's like a protest. Themselves have bad intentions, or that the people themselves that are cops are racist. It means that the institution that they are a part of has an outcome that is racist or is classist or is something that is anti or misanthropic in some way. And you cannot have a good member of law enforcement if the branch of law enforcement they're in is misanthropic at its core. So it doesn't matter how good their intentions are not going to override their job function, because the purpose of a system is what it does. And if a system is putting good people in a bad place, then that is what that system is meant to do.
And you feel like ultimately, even those quote unquote people with good intentions were ultimately part of a system that could only go one way, which is to collapse.
And to go back to your point about the SEC being full of corruption, or the CFTC, or these other non-governmental organizations, the point of those things was not to create better economic systems. The point of those things were to create capitalist structures in the Marxist sense of the word, meaning corporations and moneyed individuals controlling how laws are made.
Corporations and moneyed individuals, but that's also centralization.
Correct. Think about it. What does the SEC do? What are the job functions that members, the commissioners, and the people that make up the SEC? What were their job functions before that? They work for banks. They work for investment firms. Look at the Federal Reserve and the FDIC. The FDIC is a government organization. The Federal Reserve is a bank, right? There are congressionally, constitutionally mandated positions where, like, my old agency where I did all the ICO launches, it was called Roger Wilco. It was in the 42nd floor of the Energy Center in downtown Dallas. And on the 43rd and 44th floor was the FDIC. And so when we were trying to figure out who would we have to lobby to change the banking rules to make them more crypto friendly, we were searching up who in our building we could talk to. And we found out the guy who is like the vice president of blah, 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 whatever at the FDIC, was also the congressionally mandated appointee at the Federal Reserve for some other position. Basically, it is absolutely constitutionally mandated corruption that governs our money system. That is the version of capitalism that Marx warned against, and it is the law of the land. There are no good bankers in a classist system. There are no good cops in a racist system.
So this is why you're for free market anarchist. Sorry, say the term right so I don't butcher it.
Free market crypto anarchism. Yeah.
Free crypto. And a lot of people are like, oh well, the government can protect me.
Well, the government will tell you they're going to protect you, but the government's job is not to protect you. The government's job is to enshrine their power.
No, but so that's why you're saying. So you're saying we need DAOs. Sorry, carry on.
I'm sorry, that's not how our Constitution was originally written. I know that, but that's how it's become. Like since 1976, on the money side of the government. Like that's literally the job of the government, is to enshrine the power of the money system to never be disrupted.
So always correct corporations being, connected to government, hence why we have a centralized government system.
And a centralized bank, yeah.
And a centralized bank system as well, which is why you're just like, yeah, it's not that they're not going to help you at all, but that's not their goal, to protect you when things go bad. Right. But if we go to the completely anarchist mindset, when heinous crimes are committed, please enlighten me a little bit more about how these kinds of things are handled in the anarchist way of life, because you were not totally anarchist for a little bit, but now you're full-on crypto anarchist.
So this is outside of the realm of where crypto anarchy focuses, but it's well-trodden philosophy and talking points for traditional anarchism that's existed for a couple hundred years. And so the answer to your question is there is no single answer to your question.
That's okay.
But I'll give you some seeds of starting points of research if you're truly interested in coming up with innovative solutions to this. And those include, I would say, go ask your favorite AI agent or system, what are the current longest running, longest surviving anarchist enclaves on planet Earth. And then once you have that list, there's a few that are very interesting and worth diving into. And they all have unique and interesting ways that are all thematically related of dealing with what I won't call it criminal behavior, but I call it misanthropic behavior, because misanthropy implies something far more specific than criminality. Criminality is a violation of like the moral standards that have been codified.
Not necessarily. You remember back in the, okay, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but remember back in the day when weed was not legal?
Yeah,
of course we do. You're a criminal for weed, for having weed.
Yeah. Right, but like owning a small baggie worth of weed is not misanthropic behavior, but it is absolutely criminal behavior most places on Earth. So that's why I use that term to differentiate. Truly misanthropic behavior, like violence, is actually shockingly rare. Theft is fairly shockingly rare. The majority of what people are in prison for at the federal level is drugs and conspiracy, and at the state and city level is domestic violence. So if you reorient all of law enforcement, first of all, get rid of the drug war, you get rid of most of what's going on in federal prison, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I mean, that's pretty standard.
Then you're left with like maybe a dozen criminal kingpins that might still be around doing other types of criminal behavior, like pimping or something like that. And then you've got maybe another couple dozen serial killers and mass murderers and stuff like that that end up in federal prison. And then a vanishingly small amount of people that are involved in maybe like white collar fraud, right? But the drug war is is responsible for the vast majority of what is in a federal prison. Now, domestic violence is a different animal altogether, right?
I
Domestic
know.
and vagrancy crimes and just general nuisance crimes, these that involve misanthropic behavior. That's the sort of thing where having a strong mental health framework for dealing with the public actually solves a whole lot of problems. Imagine if every couple had available to them, regardless of their ability to pay, couples counseling. How much of an impact do you think that would have on domestic violence? Right? I mean, I don't know. We
Let me
may never know in America.
let me just be quite honest with you. If you have to go to couples counseling because your partner hit you,
Right, but it might. I think you think the idea is that they might go to couples counseling prior to getting hit. Is my point, right?
oh,
Or
okay. So what you're saying is that like having it available, you know, so that somebody will recognize that there's a problem that can't be solved prior.
right,
They have
or
like some support.
the couple counseling is not just about fixing the relationship; it's also about fixing the individuals in the relationship. And if you've got generational trauma that causes you to tend towards violence, that's the sort of thing that a therapist might catch on to. You know?
Well, you know, well, here's the thing. We also know that like people on the psychopath spectrum love to manipulate the therapist too. So I'm a little bit skeptical, you know, I mean, but like on the other hand, I have seen people make real changes. I have seen people not just make amends, but actually make efforts to say, you know, not even just to say, but by doing, realizing that they needed to change their actions and making real efforts to change their actions. And, you know, honestly, like, I mean, I'm getting a little bit happy about this right now, but honestly, it makes me feel good because if they realized it, then they do, and they do make efforts. You have to recognize it. And even in, you know, myself, when I've done things that were not appropriate, right? For
Mhm.
whatever reason, like recognizing in myself that I needed to change my behavior and that an apology wasn't enough was good. But yeah, you know, you're not wrong that, you know, couples, you know, having the ability to talk for something like that wouldn't be good. But when it comes to these kinds of things, sometimes I just feel like there is power in just, and I don't even know if it necessarily even needs to be paid for, but people who just want to work things out just because that's a human thing that we need to do is learn to communicate with one another. I'm going to bring up somebody a little bit controversial for a second.
Sure.
And let's put this on record. I definitely do not agree with everything that Charlie Kirk said. I do not. However, I think that what happened to him was horrific. And some things that he said I wholeheartedly agreed with. And one of the things that he talked about is that how when we stop talking to one another, that's when we really run into problems. And I really can't like disagree with that because yes, there are some times when people are showing signs that they're not going to make any changes whatsoever. And a lot of times it's with drug addiction and hint, hint, wink, wink. I knew too many of those people in crypto. um, but that's another story entirely. We don't need to go into all of those details right now. But if somebody, you know, is making, you know, the changes, why not? Why not accept it? If they're taking accountability, like why not invite what that comes to that, and you being able to do that too. And I feel like I kind of lost my train of thought because I just got sorry. This topic is it's sensitive for me because there are absolute times when that's when my brain got disconnected for a second because there are absolute times when yeah, you do need to like, you know, cut certain people off, right? But like think about all of the times that if we just made the effort to communicate and we didn't stop talking to each other,
Right.
how many things we could resolve. And that's where I agree with Charlie Kirk 120%.
And I'm not saying that talk therapy and having mental health availability is a fix all for everything. There's
Yeah,
still going to be misanthropic behavior that slips through. Obviously, it's humanity. There's a history of that going back to the first 5 minutes of us existing on the planet. We started doing stuff that wasn't exactly right. So
right.
the idea, but I think what it does is, if we start thinking about like what we've deemed as crime as a society and what crime actually ought to be, it shrinks the problem down to something far more manageable by a far less oppressive and authoritarian force. Right? You get rid of the drug war, you're cutting 70% of the prison population right away, if not higher. Right? Get rid of conspiracy as a crime. Conspiracy is a made up crime that came after 9/11. Get rid of the KYC AML laws. Those were also made up crimes that came up after 9/11. That's like a vast majority of financial criminals in federal prison. Right? And we're just talking about the feds there. Let's talk about the mental health side and the misanthropic behavior. Right? Putting the same dollar amount into resources for homeless people and for the mentally ill that may be on the streets, same amount of money that you would put into housing them in a jail cell, give them the facilities to stay off the street in a not jail cell, like these tiny home villages that are starting to pop up in different places.
You do run into issues where then facilitation and proper supervision needs to be in place, because there are many complaints of people in these homes just sitting around and doing coke all day or whatnot.
Sure, but if I'm an anarchist, that's fine. Just don't do it in a misanthropic way. Sit in your little tent or in your little tiny home and do coke all day. That's you, buddy. Like, if you want to do that to yourself in an anarchist society, I've got no right to tell you not. I have a right to tell you not to do it on my property, not to do it in my, in a way that impacts my family negatively. But if you want to go sequester yourself and be a druggie, bro, that's you.
It's your choice. It's your personal choice. But like, I personally, it's also my personal choice that I'm not going to pay for you to sit around and do coke all day long either.
Sure, but if the choice is to put them in a jail cell, you're going to pay for them to waste away and do drugs in jail, because trust me, people do drugs in jail. Or you're going to pay for them to go be in a place where they might be able to re-enter society, or they might do drugs. I will voluntarily pay for the latter and not the former, because prisons are dehumanizing. They will only make society worse. At least in the other instance, they have a chance of elevating themselves.
You're not wrong. But then the thought goes to my head about the sober living homes, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys have that in Texas, right?
Yeah, not to the extent that other states have it, but we do have it here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, because I think, like, and I've met some people that said that really changed their life. Like, I've met people that were doing speed and a bunch of other drugs, and they said, but really, like, the support that they got in the sober living home is the reason they got their life completely back together. And they said, there's never a day that goes by that I'm not grateful. There's never a day goes by that I don't keep in contact with the people who really helped me through that. But, like, we're not paying people to support us, right? I think one of my issues with therapy is, like, I'm paying someone to have the ability to ghost me, which a therapist has done. Yes. And it's like, right. I can just get somebody to ghost me for free. I don't need to be paying your ass like $200 an hour so you can ghost me. Right. And like, but what we're really looking for is somebody who just genuinely cares, because I'm not saying there aren't good people who practice cognitive therapy. I mean, there are. But like, a lot of these people, they'll just for a paycheck. That's whatever you say.
It's like any other profession. There's good people and there's bad people.
Yeah, there's good people and there's bad people. But this is I'm just gonna like kind of like go in this other direction without like going too far, because I love where we've gone with this. As much as I think talking is good, because talking can identify what the problem is, then other forms of therapy have to take place in order for things to really really take action. And then this is going into like a whole another thing, because talking about it is one thing, right? But then I've had to engage in other types of activities, and no, I'm not talking about doing ayahuasca in the forest, okay, where I had to go in and be like, what's wrong with my programming, and flip the switch. And everybody has to too, because you can talk all day long, but if you don't go in and flip the switch on what's the program,
Mhm.
inside your brain, you're still going to like behave in certain ways. And there's a number of different types of therapies to um, help with the programming, to change the programs so that we start running different programs and so that we start behaving differently. And anyhow,
Mhm.
sorry if I'm rambling, because like then that goes into a whole nother controversial topic.
No, I'm with you on that. I like I think that probably a very pivotal change in my mindset was happened very young. I experimented with LSD. I think that's part of what changed me as a person, to kind of break me out of whatever programming I was raised with. And so, that's, you have to, there's always got to be something that pulls you off the rails, because everything in society is meant to put you in a box and put that box on a set of rails and just send you down the line, because society doesn't care about you as an individual. That's not its job. Society's job is to make you part of the functioning whole. And it's up to you to see if that works for your benefit or not. And most people don't even bother to question it.
But so for you, LSD was the things that changed the programming. A lot of people speak about scientific research backing the use of psychedelic mushrooms in small doses.
Mhm.
And it's not like made up thing, right? So just so you guys know, like just because I've been talking about addicts on here a lot, and there's a lot of reasons for that. That doesn't mean that drugs, when used in the right dose, in the right amount, in the right setting, can't be incredibly helpful to some people. And for you, you are saying that it was the use of LSD that changed your programming to where you were able to completely. So are you telling me that really the beginning of your anarchist journey was really when, like right after you used LSD? Like, can you cite that as kind of like the first journey
That,
in?
without, I wouldn't say that that was. I mean, because it wasn't a political experience, and anarchism is at its core a form of politics. But I would say it, without that breaking out of my programming, I would not have been open to any type of thought process like that later on in life, most likely. Um, because I was always, I wasn't saying, not to say that I would have considered, old 18-year-old, 17-year-old Mark unintelligent. I was obviously had something going on upstairs, but it was in service of, you know, goals that weren't necessarily mine, or ideologies that weren't mine. And I didn't offer myself the opportunity to form my own ideologies or conclusions until after my psychedelic experience.
So if it's okay for me to ask you just a little bit, and like I want to be respectful to your time, so we'll wrap up soon. When you had that, was it visions that you saw who you really are? Was it,
I
you
can tell you
know,
the moment that it happened. It's so mundane, as it's like everybody's trip stories. It's like talking about dreams. Like they're so mundane, but
why is no, dreams are not mundane. Okay, let me just tell you really briefly without going too much. My dreams are so telling. I literally dreamt that a group of scammers was going to scam the community a year and a half before they actually did. And it was so unnerving. I could barely like breathe, and I could barely drive for like a couple of hours. I mean, I couldn't function. And
really,
guess what? They ended up scamming the community a year and a half later.
my wife says that she told me about a dream that I have no recollection of, but she says she clearly remembers having a dream that we were going to get raided by the FBI, and then it happened 3 months later. I wish she had been more forceful in her telling me of this story, because I have no recollection. She remembers it clearly. So,
Yeah.
but like it's one of those things, like dreams are meaningful to you. The psychedelic experiences are more meaningful to you, and then you start telling somebody your dreams, and that you can kind of see their eyes glaze over and disappear, and then they
You
disappear
think
into their
you
thoughts.
think
Are
I'm
you
that
done yet?
way?
Yeah. But the moment for me was, it was technically my second psychedelic experience. My first one, I was given what I was told was dud LSD. I didn't really feel anything. And so we went out to a friend of mine. A friend of mine took me to somebody I didn't know, uh, took me out to their dorm on the UNT campus in Denton, and gave me a couple of hits. We hung out, I remember the first half of the night, when I was at the peak visual stage, somebody had Armageddon, the movie, playing on TV. And that was my first exposure to that movie. And
Mhm.
to this day, my recollection of that movie is just a bunch of jumbled visuals and Steve Buscemi riding a nuclear bomb somehow. I don't really remember any other details from that movie. And so as I started to come down from that, one of my friends had told me, "Hey, if you drink orange juice, it'll have like a good effect on you while you're on acid." And I said, "Oh yeah." So I had some orange juice that we had bought on the way that was still in my car. And so I was hanging out. I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna go out and get that orange juice and come back in." And I go back out, and I can't find my car. And I come back in. This is an unfamiliar place. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just I'm turned around. I don't remember where we parked. So I got one of the guys I came with. We went out there, couldn't find my car. We came back in. We're like, now it's turned into like a whole side quest. And I got the third buddy of mine that we had rolled with, and we went out there to go find it. No, none of us are crazy. The car is really gone. So we come back in. We tell the guy that was living there, and he goes, "Yeah, man, did you park under the covered parking?" I'm like, yeah. Yep, your car got towed. And Mark, from prior to that night, would have spent the rest of the evening obsessing about the loss of my car because, I didn't have a lot in the world at that time. I didn't have a car. I don't have a life. I'm going to be stranded in Denton. What am I going to do? How am I going to get back home? How am I going to get to work on Monday? All these things that would have just flooded my brain and ruined my evening. And where am I going to get the $300 to get it out of impound? All this other stuff. And in that moment, I was like, okay, wait a second. I'm having a unique experience in life that I probably never, I have absolutely never had in the past, may never have again in the future. I'm experiencing some deep thoughts and some interesting visuals. And I'm going to sit here and ruin my evening and this once in a lifetime experience to worry about life. Why am I going to do that? I am just going to make the decision to control my mental state and not worry about what can't be changed. That is so mundane. That is such a mundane aphorism to have as a realization. But I'm telling you, that's the moment in time where I realized I could rewrite my program that I had lived by my entire life, and it changed the way I approached my life ever since.
Because you were just like, why am I caring about this?
Why? Like this is a problem that will keep until tomorrow, right? Like I can worry about this tomorrow and solve the problem tomorrow. And guess what? I did solve the problem the next day, and it wasn't that big a deal, you know. But that is not the mindset of what teenage Mark would have done prior to that night. And
You would have obsessed about what happened to it all night. You would have played the self-blame game and, and,
yeah,
and so on and so forth. Yeah.
yeah, and the realization that I could change how my brain works and positively impact my quality of life and the decisions that I make and the experiences that I have was revelatory and has guided my behavior ever since.
But that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
but like
and
I don't think that would have happened without hallucinogenics. But again, I don't know what your thoughts are hearing that story, but like a lot of people probably hear that story and go, "Yeah, duh, that's just how brains work." But like that's not obvious.
no. Look. I'm not going to sit here and say like I'm so innocent and I've never done anything except drink alcohol. That's a lie, right? But and I don't know how to say this without like somebody being like whatever, like give an attitude. Like what you described, in terms of what? Oh no, you're frozen. Oh no, you're not frozen. You're just
I'm just very
thinking.
still.
What
I'm like a
what
ninja.
like for me, like the most insane experiences that I've had were when I was not on anything ever. It's
Mm.
just like sober me is is so in tune, more in tune than I don't know if I could ever be as in tune as I am when I'm just completely dead, sober. I mean, the kind of insights that I'm able to have, but I didn't I had an issue with for many years. I didn't trust my gut. I didn't trust my intuition. Even when I would have it and it would never be fucking wrong, you know. But like it's not even just trusting your gut. It's also what you're talking about is something a little bit deeper, which I will explore a little bit later because it's kind of a personal story. Trusting that everything's going to be okay, trusting that I can deal with this tomorrow. It's not just about trusting your intuition at that point, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, but it takes a certain, it's not even a mindset. I don't even think that that's really appropriate, because I don't really know if it's really an understanding of the mind. It's not something that's set. It's more like a mind free, right? It's like when your mind is free, it can like allow, other possibilities to come in. The possibility that I'm going to be okay no matter what. The possibility that, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'll figure this out. But just this flexibility. Ha ha ha. Sorry, I'm quoting myself on my content. It's a bad joke. But like, it's okay. Plenty totally got the historical reference there. But I mean, but that being said, but like, it's that kind of flexibility that you started to get from that experience that made you feel like you were going to be okay. For me, I did have a specific experience, and it wasn't drugs, but it was something else that I literally, at the next day, I felt mind free. And I know, I haven't followed you for that long, maybe like a couple months now, but you may have always just seen, oh, she's always been making content. I was not just making content all the time until after this experience happened, but it flipped a switch in my brain. And all of a sudden, like, that's one of the changes that started happening, was I was like, I can just create all the time now. There's nothing to hold back. And like the Radiohead song says, right? There is nothing to fear and nothing to doubt, right? It'll be okay. But I didn't have that before. Something was unlocked, during that experience. And for you, it was LSD. For me, it was something else. And, as I venture more into being open about that, I will be talking more about that particular experience in the future, because it is something that can also be cultivated as a skill. And I still remember what happened, and I do actively do things to program my brain. And no, it's not just fucking affirmations. But active practice is to kind of like make sure that the programming stays good, to make sure that I don't that I'm not tempted to start going back to old programs that aren't gonna like serve me anymore. And and it is still kind of fucking painful sometimes, but I mean, like, but something's been unlocked. And whatever the fuck it is, for you it was the drugs, for me it was that other thing. But it's that other thing that I feel like people can implement more daily. But sometimes you do need something strong, like what happened to me. Basically, someone hit me with a 2x4, to get there. But it was also, and sorry, and I'll stop in a minute, but it also took so much trauma for me to get to a point where I would even be open to having my brain unlocked like this.
I mean, this is essentially what psychedelics are. And remember how I started this. I grew up in East Texas. It's not what do you believe, it's which church do you go to, and what Republican do you like the most. That's some strong programming to grow up in for basically 20 years of your life, right?
100%.
It took something that was the psychedelic equivalent of a 2x4 across the head to knock me off of that track. And to even realize that there was perspectives outside the ones that I was raised in. So it's that trauma will do it. I mean, I saw it happen in prison for people. I saw people that it was like being a cloistered monk for them. There was this dude, I won't say his name because he's out now and he watches my stuff, so he might see this, but he'll know I'm talking about him.
It's okay.
But he was a dude who he was down for about 7 years, I want to say. White collar guy. He ran call centers that were in the business of defrauding people out of their money to sell them business opportunities. A really kind of a scuzzy business, but he was also one of like the most positively impacted by prison people that I met while I was in there, because he he was able to not be able to, he didn't need to worry about what he was going to be financially set when he came out. I won't go into any more detail than that.
Yeah.
Have the future worries. he didn't have present worries because he had figured out ways to work the system inside, and he was, he had good food, he had good, a good cell, and all the things that are the status symbols when you're locked up that you have long term. And
Mhm.
he just studied spirituality and had a spiritual journey that led him to. I mean, now he's again, I can't give too much details without doxing him. But like he's a much better person now. He's doing positive things for the world now that he's out. He's having fun with life. He like he and I would have these long, in-depth spiritual discussions about like the nature of existence and humanity and morality and these other things. And it was clear to him that the trauma that was prison put him on a different path, a better path than he would ever have achieved had nobody been able to challenge the track that he was on. So he had a literal spiritual awakening. And that's the last thing that I'll ever say good about prison in public, because for the most part, it's a horrible, horrible thing that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But for him, it worked out.
But like he didn't like start coming in contact with people of a spiritual practice while he was in prison. Or he did. I'm trying to understand. I'm confused here.
So I'm gonna see how I can describe this without getting too detailed. So he was involved. Yeah, he was involved in the 12-step program before coming into prison, and there's a pretty good culture of the 12-step program inside of prison. If you seek it out, it's where you'll find some of the most earnest people because they are on that recovery journey and they're trying to do steps, and you don't get really much special credit for being there. You don't get time off or anything. It's purely voluntary to go to a 12-step program, And so I think that, there was not much spiritual nourishment to be found in prison, but what little there was, he was like a lantern that attracted it, and he was able to find those people that were interested in talking about it.
But this is a whole nother thing, and we will probably have to get into it sometime. There is somebody else I'm thinking that I would love to have join this discussion because I'm so glad you're not afraid of that word spiritualism or spirituality. Met too many Bible thumping atheists in my life. And what I mean by Bible thumping atheists is, they want to shove their not religion on you as just as much as other people want to shove their religion on you. And for me, I'm just like a simple person. I don't need the fucking labels. I mean, like, although I'm not going to hide it, and I shouldn't. I literally do chant the fucking Nembutsu, in my little, in the themes for this, because I mean, even though I haven't been actively in the Sangha, in a temple for a little bit, I was actively in a Jödo Shinshu Buddhist temple for like 16 years or something like that. But you get a lot of folks that argue, oh, is it religion? Is it philosophy? Blah, blah, blah. But I think I'm actually really comfortable with the word, spiritualism. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with it, because here's the thing. There's a lot of things that we don't necessarily know. Everybody wants to make everything so definitive when there's actually a lot more fluidity. There's a lot more flexibility. But when you're saying that he had a spiritual experience or like a spiritualistic type of experience that made him really kind of just understand, how he needed to move differently, I don't see that that's like a bad thing. And it is very personal, and it is very like, it's not dogmatic, these kinds of experiences. They're not. And like in the Buddhist practice, there's not really much focus on morals. Actually, really not at all, because you're supposed to like, because when you
are you familiar with Richard Rohr, by the way?
How what?
Richard Rohr.
Do you want to send me a link?
Yeah, I'll send you a link. Yeah, so that was actually the one, because we did like our own. He and I explored a bunch of different spiritual practices while we were together, but the one that we wound up really gravitating towards was a guy by the name of Richard Rohr. He's a Franciscan priest who practices Buddhism. And he's written tons of books about it. And the interesting thing is that he finds that in his opinion, and I happen to concur, is that Christianity is the answer to Buddhism, and Buddhism is the answer to Christianity, because there's not a lot of there's a lot of what's missing in one side present in the other, and if you complement one with the other, it becomes far less dogmatic and far more spiritual. The Christians, especially in modern American times, find themselves like almost like the Pharisees that they are taught to revile from the Old Testament. Very legalistic, very Karen-y, very get off my lawn. And Buddhism is the practice of.
It's not legalistic.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite, right? But like, if you practice the teachings of what is in Buddhism in a way that is compatible with Christianity, you'll find that one feels like it fulfills the other. Anyway, like, I'm not here to proselytize. That's actually the opposite.
No. I mean, I'm not trying, like, I'm not saying you are, but here's the thing, right?
Since part of feature that I found that I just felt was worth mentioning. So go ahead.
No, I mean, like, and just to reiterate here, right? Like, I know you understand like the core of what Citizen Glitch is about, but for those people who it's your first time tuning in, like, the core of everything that we talk about here is human rights, right? And sometimes that does mean we're going to talk about like Mark's journey into crypto anarchy today, or the other day we talked about, needing to prepare our altcoins for quantum resistant technology, because, security, there is no freedom without security and privacy and all this and that. And, and then initially just talking about what does sovereignty mean to you? And if you weren't living sovereign, what got you on that path? But like, for you, like, part of like this show, really, like, this transmission, fundamentals are really at the core, regardless of what other else things that we talk about. And yes, and sometimes it is going to be tech, and it should be tech, because like that's affecting like our basic human rights. But part of like what I obviously support is no censorship. And it's like, I feel like if somebody wants to talk about, their spiritualistic beliefs, or if they want to talk about their agnostic or whatever, or if they want to say, oh, I'm an atheist or blah, 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 they should be allowed to express themselves. It's free speech. And like, for years, I'd be like, oh my God, I need to like not tell anyone I'm Buddhist. They're going to think I'm fucking proselytizing. No, you guys don't understand. We are not trying to convert you. I really don't give a fuck if you want to, convert or not. I really could care less. But interesting thing that you said, and I'll leave you with this interesting thought, right? This is a story. Somebody asked the Dalai Lama, like, well, should I, I'm Christian, should I convert to Buddhism? And he said, not if it's working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not if it's, and I thought that was beautiful, because I think we try to dogmatize, something that is really should be such a personal, humanistic experience for people. And you should never feel bad about bringing stuff up. I am not here to censor people. I mean, obviously, if somebody's coming up here and they're insulting me, or if they're insulting you or something like that, instead of just saying, I respectfully disagree with the idea, that's different, because I'm not going to promote people not being kind, but you get the point. And so like, right. I really enjoyed talking to you today, but like, now you're getting me excited that there's somebody else I would love to have. There's a couple of other people I can think of on different conversations that I would love to have with you, because, I've said this before, you're truly one of the more fascinating people in the world. And this has been fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You give me a great platform to talk about things that I haven't had the chance to talk about in a while, or at all in some cases. So it's been a lot of fun, and I would love to chat with you anytime.
Oh, love that. Okay. And you've given me some more things to do deep research on God mode, because if you crave deep research, there is no better uncensored private AI out there. I mean, it's really the only way. I mean, like, where else are you going to be able to race 55 models at once and have it jailbreak and not be censored? Where else are you going to find that? I mean, right. You're just not. And so I need to, in the next week, I'm going to get some ideas and make some new new content was something I can do for that. And you've introduced me to Sanctum and given me some great reasons for that. And honestly, just your time and your energy is a gift, and I'm grateful to you for it. And I hope we'll see you soon.
Of course, I'm always around on the internets, and anytime you want me back here, just let me know.
For sure. Okay, guys, for now, bye.